As the bell tolled, Constance Grayle dragged her friend Kate through the crowd, wondering if there was a festival going on. Kate tried telling Constance they should go home, but someone would bump into them and they'd be separated. Panicking and unable to find her friend, Constance ran through the crowd, accidentally walking past a barricade where the punishment was to be administered. Watching the cloaked woman ascend the steps of the podium, they'd unveil her, and seeing the woman's hair black as night, eyes amethyst glimmering, Constance thought she was so pretty. A brief silence. Then the woman said, "A curse upon you! A curse upon you all!" Rain began to pour, and the people called her a fiend, murderer, and that she was the cursed one. Constance covered her ears and closed her eyes. She's never witnessed the feral wickedness that lied within the common everyday man. She opened her eyes, and they locked with the woman's. In this brief moment, it's like the world was soundless. The woman let off a sad smile, and as the bell tolled once more, she uttered something only Constance could hear. The executioner drew his blade. As the woman knelt down, lightning struck. At the same moment he struck her. Blood splattered on Constance, and with the woman's head presented, the people cheered. "It's over! She's dead!" A traumatizing experience little Constance would scream over. We turned to the Lesser Palace, Grand Merillion. It had been 10 years since that night at St. Mark's Square. Constance was 16 now. Viscount Hamsworth congratulated her, saying surely the fates would bless her union, especially since the Grayle family motto was, "Thou shalt act with sincerity." She pondered on that. A few months ago, her father, the living embodiment of the Grayle family's sincerity, found himself under a mountain of debt. On the condition that the Bronson family pay for it, she became engaged to Mr. Bronson's son and heir, Neil. He was quite the gentleman. She couldn't deny that she's dreamed of marrying for love, but a plain, dull girl like her getting a handsome, well-mannered gentleman to consent to become her husband, she considered herself blessed, or so she thought. Her friend Mylene had heard the news. However, everyone was talking about Neil and Pamela Francis. Someone saw them together in each other's arms when they thought no one was watching. This was shocking news for Constance. Kate told Mylene to stop spreading groundless rumors, but Mylene went further. She heard Pamela went through men the way normal people went through dance partners. This weighed heavily on Constance's mind. She trusted Neil. He was his usual kind self to her this very day. Unfortunately, she'd find him holding Pamela under the streetlight. Pamela spotted her and smirked, pulling Neil in for a kiss. Constance ran away, teary-eyed. She wished she could pretend she hadn't seen them. Still, she needed to face this with sincerity and talk it through with him. She turned and eeked, suddenly seeing a woman beside her, and by a glance, Constance thought she was gorgeous. Looking at the ballroom, the woman said, "Sure seems festive." Constance invited her inside, and because of that, the woman was allowed in. She thanked Constance for helping her. Constance continued to ponder on what to do with Neil. And then, Brenda meekly congratulated her engagement. Constance felt she'd seen Brenda around before with Pamela. As Brenda took her leave, Constance noticed her hair ornament was falling off. Brenda's eyes nervously widened, spotting Pamela above. Constance tried to help her out, and Brenda made the excuse that she needed to get her evening bag upstairs, and asked that Constance look after her hair ornament. Some time passed, and Pamela would shout Constance's name. Pamela made a scene, saying she was well aware of Constance's family situation, but she's gone too far. She announced Constance stole Brenda's hair ornament. The framing was diabolic. Pamela suggested Constance, being short on money, would do anything she could to get some by stealing Brenda's valuable ornament. Neil couldn't believe Constance would steal, but Pamela would take her bag from her, and out from it came the ornament. Pamela told her to explain in front of everyone, and Constance begged Brenda to please tell them the truth. Pamela told Constance to stop with the pitiful excuses, and coddled Brenda, who was trembling in fear. She then told Neil that now that he could see what Constance was really like, he should annul his engagement right away. Marrying her would sully the Bronson Company's reputation. He felt bad though, because there wasn't exactly concrete proof. Pamela said the proof was every witness here, and since they had Priest Viscount Hamsworth, they could annul it right away. Constance was frantic, but Pamela would use her own family's motto against her. "Thou shalt act with sincerity." Pamela said so much for the sincerity of the Grayles, calling Constance a no-good robber. I really hate this stupid bitch. My ideal world? Send her and people like her to the gallows. As people clamored, Constance fell to her knees, begging anyone to help her. The woman from earlier said, "Very well, I'll help you out for a price. She spoke through Constance, saying, "And which one of us is the robber here exactly?" Pamela was shocked. She hated how Constance always proudly spouted nonsense about sincerity. She's never liked her, and hated how everything fell into her lap, even though Constance was far inferior to her in both looks and family fortune. That's why she decided to use Brenda to destroy her. Pamela tried to clap back, but Constance cut her off, reminding her the man she was so sensually riding in the bushes was her dear fiancé. Ha! Shame her for being a hoe. Pamela shrieked that they were just kissing, and Neil stopped her. But since Pamela was kissing Constance's fiancé, Constance argued that actually made her the robber. Constance then turned towards the various crowd guests, who witnessed Brenda hand over her ornament, and walked towards Wayne, who was the first one to notice what actually happened. She pressed him enough until he eventually said the truth, and the other guests all started talking about what really happened. The Viscount would come down, and Constance told him to void her engagement at once, because if he didn't, she'd make sure word of tonight's party at the Grand Merillion, held by him, where this couple consorted to engage in carnal acts in the sacred royal garden, would reach His Majesty's ears by whatever means necessary. Pamela didn't understand. This wasn't the Constance Grail she knew. Constance bowed out, wishing the young couple consumed by illicit passion be blessed. With her walking out, Pamela would chase after, but be tripped by one of the ladies. The woman in green regarded Constance quite favorably, and found Pamela's actions galling. Where she was from, adulterers wore piping hot shoes, and danced until they died. Neil and Pamela danced, Pamela's feet bloodying without shoes, and the bystanders' carnal retribution satisfied by the sight. They were surprised by Constance. It was almost as if Scarlet Castile herself crawled back out from the deepest pits of hell to speak through her. The next morning, Constance woke up from what she thought was a dream, but found Scarlet by her bedside. A shocking sight. She shrieked. When Scarlet introduced herself, Constance thought that couldn't possibly be true. Scarlet Castile was executed 10 years ago, but with the woman now floating in the air, it was evident she definitely wasn't alive. Scarlet was a wicked woman beyond comparison. She plotted to poison her romantic rival, Cecilia, a Viscount's daughter, to the Crown Prince Enrique, denouncing her crimes at the Grand Merillion. And not only was their engagement annulled, but her utterly ruthless behavior led to her execution 10 years ago. Scarlet didn't remember a thing about the day she was executed, but the Grand Merillion was where she was humiliated by that idiotic Enrique and that black-hearted Cecilia. Remembering infuriated her. When she came to, she found herself in that place, but for some reason couldn't enter the hall. She was sure it was thanks to Constance she was able to enter. She matter-of-factly told Constance she seemed plain, unassuming, and had no redeeming traits. But the fact she noticed Scarlet was something she could be proud of. What a smug ghost. Scarlet was here to make sure Constance held her part of the deal. Constance would append the rest of her life, ensuring Scarlet succeeded in getting vengeance. Scarlet made up her mind to send every last one of those scoundrels who had executed her to hell. You'd think she knew who they were, but she was clueless. How could she know? After all, she was set up. She wasn't the type to resort to something so pedestrian as poisoning Cecilia. Constance would become her agent, unmasking the culprit and sentencing them to hell on earth. Connie was skeptical about this, but Scarlet mentioned that her family was in debt. Plus, she didn't have much of a choice with her marriage being annulled. Scarlet asked if refusing to repay her sounded like the Grail's sincerity her family boasted of. Constance would have to agree to the deal. Shortly after, she'd visit an orphanage, telling the nun that she came on behalf of the Orlamoons and introducing herself as Letty. She explained that the family wished to collect letters from the Maurice home for orphaned children to commemorate Lady Lily's death this day. This was all a part of the plan to question those who might have known what happened to Scarlet. She figured Lily Orlamoon would be useful. After all, they were friends. After Scarlet's death, Lily devoted herself to good works to atone for her crimes. People referred to her as the White Lily of charity for her fairness. Constance admired her. However, 2 years ago, Lily poisoned herself, ending her own life in her family's chapel. The reason for her action remained unknown till this day. To Scarlet, it didn't make sense that Lily would choose self-end, especially for someone so ill-natured. Weren't they friends? Apparently, Scarlet didn't see it that way. She'd sooner do a handstand dance on a cliff's edge than keep company with her. Constance recalled stories of Lily usually visiting Scarlet when no one else would. Back then, Lily knew Scarlet would never try something like poisoning Cecilia. Still, it meant there was someone out there who was capable of framing a woman of her caliber, and they had no idea who this was. So, Lily had come to bid her goodbye, thinking this business was beyond her. She would have loved to assist Scarlet, but her own life was more precious to her. After receiving the letters from the kids, Constance was to visit the scene of Lily's self-end. For this, she would have to properly dress up as a nun. Arriving at the Marquess of Orleman's residence, she greeted the guard. Despite his frightening glare, he led her to the chapel. Getting inside, Constance tried to pay her respects to the deceased by praying, but Scarlet claimed Lily wouldn't be pleased by any of that. She'd rather have them hurry up and find out the truth. Knowing Lily, Scarlet suspected she would have left a clue behind the painting. As Constance lifted it, she found something attached to the back. Sensing someone was about to open the door, she quickly took the item and hid it. As the man entered, Scarlet couldn't believe it was Randolph Ulster. What was he doing here? Apparently, Constance told Scarlet that Lily was married to Randolph Ulster of the House of Richelieu. However, Scarlet saw him as her nemesis. Some even referred to Randolph as the Lord of Death. Randolph then asked Constance about George, the little red-headed boy he often played with at the orphanage. Before she could answer incorrectly, Scarlet told her to answer that George had chestnut hair, while Tony was actually the kid with red hair. Nice save. After making things clear, Constance excused herself. Randolph offered to walk her back to the orphanage, and she appreciated the offer, but would have to decline, claiming she had errands to run. Finally out of the chapel, she was relieved to be away from someone so intimidating. She wondered if Randolph suspected her. Scarlet couldn't tell, but knew the man had a keener nose than was good for him. Back in the chapel, Randolph noticed the painting was slanted and saw pieces of what Constance had ripped off on the floor. Returning to the orphanage, Constance dropped the clothes she was given at the gate, and a little money as well. The children suddenly approached her, and Tony said, "Kiriki kirikuku," whatever the hell that meant. Constance was confused. He told her it was a spell for spotting bad guys, which they had learned from Lily. Before she died, she taught them this spell, telling them to recite it to whoever came asking about her. If the person reacted, it meant they were a very bad person. And in that circumstance, the children were to round up everyone and run for it. Could this mean Lily was murdered? Back home, Constance was exhausted. She opened the package she found, which held a key and a piece of paper with one instruction: destroy the Holy Grail of Eris. Neither of the two had any idea what it meant. Eris was the goddess of discord and strife in the myth of Ferris, a wicked deity who was said to have driven a nation to ruin. That was according to a legend from their country, Adelbide's neighboring land. Eris was also the alias Scarlet used when she wanted to have fun during nightlife. As for the key, it had a number engraved on it, but nothing to indicate which workshop it was made in. There weren't enough clues to figure out what it was for. Later on, Constance would meet up with Kate. Her friends were worried about her, especially since her engagement was called off. The events had made it to the papers with the headline, "Poor Constance Grail proves even a lamb will charge at a hound when provoked." That was the Mayflower's editorial take on the matter anyway. Pamela headed back to her family's domain the next day. Though they claimed it was for her health, everyone knew she ran away like the little wimp she was. As for Neil, the Bronson Company's aristocratic clients started a boycott. Just this morning, he had come to apologize to Constance, and she told him how to stop the people coming after them. She didn't blame the rest of the people at the Bronson Company. She was way too sincere for her own good. Still, Kate warned her to be careful, since she had become an overnight celebrity. Even though Constance didn't want to mention where she was last night, Kate didn't mind. She would always be there if her friend needed her help. Considering what had happened, Kate figured Constance wanted nothing to do with men. That was until she saw an invitation letter inviting Constance to Amelia Godwin's ball. She wished Constance good luck on her journey finding a new man. After she left, Scarlet decided they'd be attending the ball, knowing Baroness Godwin loved nothing more than to talk of the misfortune of others. If they played their cards right, Amelia would sing for them like a canary in mating season. Arriving at the ball, Constance approached Amelia Godwin. In one glance, Amelia thought she was more refined than before, but still a far cry from Scarlet. Greeting her, Constance mimicked Scarlet's mannerisms perfectly, to the point that it scared Amelia. With Amelia gone, Scarlet spotted Aisha Huxley and asked Constance to go see what she had to say. But Constance panicked upon spotting Randolph. She begged Scarlet to take over, but the ghost couldn't stand the man, so she abandoned Constance without a second thought. Randolph walked up to her, referring to Constance as the sister he saw the other day. With her trying to feign ignorance, he went straight to the point. What did she want? Was it his late wife's will, or was there something else she was after? Scared to tears, she prayed for someone to save her. Scarlet would come back and deal with what she was running from. Taking over Constance's body, she asked if Randolph had any proof of his claims. He proposed going back to the orphanage to see if they'd confirm that she was the same Letty who visited on behalf of the Orlamunds. She declined, valuing herself too highly to arrange a date with a gentleman she just met. Suddenly, they were interrupted by the sound of shattering glass and gasps from the crowd. Margot Tudor had attacked Teresa Jennings, breaking a glass on her, claiming Teresa had an affair with her husband. After tending to the matter, Randolph decided to let Constance go for the day, but he wondered if she could really say she wasn't involved. After the party, Constance would come across Amelia outside. She asked what exactly happened to Scarlet 10 years ago. Amelia answered it was the usual story of her being executed because she tried to poison Cecilia. But Constance felt there was more. Amelia would then tell her that in the 7th Division of Inmest Mars, at the old Montrose residence, the invitation was an Earl John Doe's hat. Leaving, she added that those who won in life were those who survived. So she hoped Constance wouldn't be forced to make an early exit. Into liking the video and subscribing to my channel. You better subscribe, or when I die, I'll come and haunt you from the grave. And it'd be a grave mistake not to watch my Villainess playlist. There's at least 20 hour-long plus videos about villainesses in it for you to enjoy. So come on, hit that subscribe, or you might die. Scarlet suspected Amelia was talking about the Earl John Doe ball. This was a secret ball where nobles hid their faces behind masks. It was probably the best place to gather intelligence. She mentioned that the lowlives who infested such balls feared not even the gods. To get Constance a mask, they'd have to sneak into Scarlet's old home. Considering Scarlet was a regular at these balls, someone might approach Constance if she wore her old mask. It would also be a chance for Constance to find out about the lurid secrets of the guests. Be you sincere? Constance always thought this was the right mindset to follow. However, her father was tricked and Pamela framed her. Sincerity alone wouldn't solve anything. If what it took to make things right was wickedness, then Constance was ready to do it. Sneaking into the Castillo residence, Constance thought it was quite enormous. She would get stopped by a stern man, asking where she was going. She answered she was heading over to the dressing room, so he pointed her in the right direction. Emotions filled Scarlet as she stared at this blonde-haired man, who was her big brother. She didn't think there was much of a resemblance between them. After all, they had different mothers. But Constance thought otherwise, saying the way they addressed her and the air about them were similar. Scarlet asked Constance if she had heard of Cornelia of the Starry Crown. She was the last empress of the neighboring country of Ferris, which was known to be a vast empire. At the time, the Ferris Empire pursued a strategy of marrying royalty from the nations it invaded to rule them. Then, an imperial prince eloped with a certain lady, and they had a daughter who came to be known as Cornelia of the Starry Crown. Her lineage entitled her to many crowns of vassal states, as numerous as the stars, not to mention the imperial throne. Even Adelbide was part of her empire back then. When the vassal states finally rebelled and the empire fell, she escaped harm in the neutral nation of Soldita. Time passed, and word spread that a country girl in Soldita carried the blood of Cornelia of the Starry Crown. She was known as Crownless Eleanor, Scarlet's mother. That meant Scarlet was descended from the imperial family of Ferris. After the little story time, Constance retrieved the mask. Getting to the old Montrose residence, Constance was allowed in after saying the secret phrase, "It's an Earl John Doe's hat." In the hall, smoke filled the air as the nobles chatted discreetly with one another. Without wasting time, Scarlet led her to see the hostess, Deborah Darkian. Constance would introduce herself as heiress, sparking attention from people around. There used to be a guest with the same name 10 years ago, but Deborah claimed she was a reckless girl who got her head parted from her body. She hoped Constance's head remained firmly attached. While getting something to eat, Constance noticed a sweet smell. It was coming from a woman Scarlet knew as Jane. Before Constance could figure out anything about her, she was approached by Viscount Hamsworth. Safe to say, his costume and mask couldn't hide his looks. Here, he preferred to be called Moon-Dappled Ham. Was he even trying to hide it all? Saying the phrase, "hide a tree in the forest," the Viscount felt someone had brought some rotten wood tonight. Suddenly, someone ran in, alerting everyone that the security force had caught on. Everyone quickly scattered to save themselves. As Scarlet suspected, something was off about those 3 dancing girls. Someone was using this ball as a cover for human trafficking. Amidst the madness, Jane bumped into Constance, falling to the ground. Her wrist snapped. Blood slowly poured out. Scarlet told Constance to run quickly, but she couldn't just leave the lady. Ripping her dress, she tied the wound. Scarlet warned she'd be doomed if they caught her. Even if she had done nothing wrong, she'd be put to death in no time. Constance's good heart would be the end of her. As the officer grabbed her, Scarlet raged. Lightning shot through, causing the man to let go. A violent wind blew, taking out the lights like a bad omen. The officer would then point his blade at Constance, demanding to know who she was. That's when Randolph came to her rescue, stopping his comrade. George argued that she was using some kind of trickery, but Randolph asked if that was more important than saving the wounded. Without a doubt, Constance had no hand in the human trafficking, so Randolph saw no reason to arrest her. Still, they had met 3 times. At this point, it had to be fate. So, he asked her to come clean with him. Constance looked to Scarlet for help, but she wasn't interested. Randolph was born in the house of Richelieu. They were great nobles on par with the Castilles. Seeing no other choice, Constance asked if he was willing to negotiate. He easily saw through her and asked if she was willing to suffer through a scandal. Abandoning her sincerity, she was ready to take on whatever life threw at her. Randolph told her the simplest method was to get engaged. Before even understanding his words, she blurted out, "I'd like nothing better." And then it finally clicked. Well, it was already too late. The next day, they went to a priest to bless their union. Now, Constance understood why Scarlet avoided Randolph. With this union, they could clear the Grail family's debts, and he had a pretext to keep an eye on her. Of course, she'd be free to annul the engagement before long. Constance didn't see how this union benefited him, and she'd be shocked to hear that he wasn't interested in getting married. Having a fiancé would act as a repellent towards any ladies approaching him, so in the end, the union was quite beneficial. Getting down to business, she explained wanting to clear Scarlet's ghost of her false conviction. Ralph thought her story was preposterous. It was unusually consistent for fiction. Sometimes, she resembled Scarlet so much that he could almost believe she was her. He didn't mind if she wanted to clear Scarlet's name, stating her desire to help others was laudable. Randolph asked if there was anything else Constance was hiding, following Scarlet's orders. She told him there was none, but boy, was she a poor liar. He could see right through her. Constance's debt problems were over, so Scarlet felt she was done helping her. However, Constance mentioned that when she was faced with problems she couldn't solve herself, she screamed inwardly for someone to help her, and eventually, Scarlet came to her rescue. She wanted to properly thank Scarlet for saving her. Now, it was her time to return the favor. Back at the Royal Security Office, Kyle burst into the room, complaining that the hostages they caught took poison and died in jail. But he confirmed their ringleader didn't have a sun tattoo, which meant they had no ties to the De Gallus organization. He suggested bringing Constance in for questioning, and Randolph shocked him by revealing his engagement to her. And he was set to visit the El Bait Villa with her tomorrow. At the villa, Randolph and Constance would meet the Crown Prince, Enrique Adelbide, the same man who broke his betrothal to Scarlet. The Crown Princess, Cecilia Adelbide, then walked in, dazzling in a radiant beauty. She quickly took a liking to Constance, and also wanted them to have tea together sometime. Between Randolph's mean stare and Cecilia's bright personality, Constance didn't know which scared her more. Cecilia didn't like that Randy picked a day to visit when she had official commitments. Like a switch, her personality suddenly became condescending. Seeing him look so put out was a rare treat for her, so she forgave him. She was to receive a distinguished guest from the south after this. As Cecilia grabbed Constance's hands, it felt so cold, almost like her bright persona wasn't real. Changing the subject, Randolph asked Enrique if he had heard from Ferris's emissary. The Crown Prince mentioned they were a proud bunch who had nothing but history to boast of. He wouldn't mind if their economic woes were as bad as rumors painted them. On their way out, Constance asked Scarlet why she disliked Cecilia. However, it was Cecilia who took a dislike to Scarlet first. It was more like Cecilia regarded everyone who entered her sight with enmity. Only one word could truly describe it: hatred. King Ernst Adelbide would then approach Constance. He had heard she was the second coming of Scarlet, but she seemed like quite the charming young lady. Walking through a flower field, he told her that the violets in their kingdom tend to have a reddish hue. There was a legend stating that a sprite that dwelt in Adelbide's violets were careless. It drew too close to the dead, burning in hell, suffering horrible burns itself. When asked what she thought of this, Scarlet took over. She thought perhaps the flower sprite hoped to save the dead. It wouldn't dare go on blooming so boldly if it hadn't anything to be ashamed of. Hearing this, Ernst was reminded of Scarlet. Knowing her, she would most likely say, "The affairs of wildflowers are no concern of mine." At that moment, it was as if the king could see Scarlet in front of him. Constance informed Randolph that she had been summoned by an investigative committee. Deborah Darkian summoned her to the Twilight Room at the Grand Merillion for investigation. It wasn't legally enforceable. Randolph saw no reason for her to play along. Regardless, Constance planned to go. She was certain there was much more she needed to learn. According to Scarlet, Deborah's investigative committee's gatherings were famous, but none knew what transpired there. No one breathed a word about it. Hence, it was given the name the Silent Ladies' Tea Party, lit up with only candles. Deborah welcomed Constance, stamping with a blood print. Constance agreed not to speak of anything that happened here. Deborah revealed she had received a letter from Pamela, saying that nothing Constance did broke the law. So, Deborah and her friends would do the honor of judging Constance, so she wouldn't end up like Scarlet. Deborah mocked Scarlet's last impression as her face rolled through the mud like a toy. She could never bear the shame of such an ignominious end. Rage filled with Scarlet's eyes, but with Constance holding her hand, she calmed down. This time around, they'd fight together. With Scarlet taking over, they'd be the judges now. She assumed the Earl John Doball must have been a blow to Deborah. However, Deborah claimed to be the one who reported the dancing children to the security force. She sarcastically remarked, the mere thought of human traffickers in their midst made her blood run cold. But why did everyone here have ties to the Darkians? Take the Marquess of McLean, who looked so friendly with the slavers. Scarlet was talking about Esther's husband. She doubted he'd be able to avoid prison, but might receive a lighter sentence if he named the ringleader. Using Randolph's position as leverage, she offered to put in a good word for Esther's husband, depending on her testimony. Now the tables had flipped. The Marchioness of McLean must have known Deborah had a hand in the crime. Constance hoped she could get her to attest to that. Deborah would pressure Esther, mentioning that her husband was about to leave the country and wouldn't be back for a while. During this time, Esther couldn't defy her. The thought of a Viscount's daughter crushing a Darkian was laughable. Now, it was time to cast votes. Things weren't looking good for Constance, but if she bent the knee like a good little girl, Deborah might consider Pamela's words as imagination. But Constance didn't agree with her methods. She refused to back down. Suddenly, the doors flung open as Abigail O'Brien barged in and opened the curtains. The four great noble families of the kingdom were the Castiles, the Richelieus, the Darkians, and the O'Briens. Abigail sat in Susanna Neville's seat. Presenting her credentials, she stamped with her blood print. And then she uttered, Esther, Janine, Carol. Unless you want to be crushed, do as I say. Seeing this as a threat, Deborah argued that she must have legal recourse if Abigail insisted on menacing her friends. But that wouldn't work. After all, everything said here wasn't allowed to leave the room. Furious, Deborah would excuse herself. Afterwards, Abigail warned Constance not to take such thoughtless risks. She told her to save her thanks for Randolph. He came calling at Abigail's house, asking her to help his fiancée. He had looked into the participants and acquired the letter for her. Hearing this, Constance felt warm and fuzzy on the inside. Leaving the building, she was suddenly grabbed by a reporter, Amelia Hobbs. Amelia asked when she started looking up to Scarlet, and if she was rebelling against the famous Grail family ideal of sincerity. She assumed Constance was frustrated when the papers all focused on Teresa Jennings' death. The man she was having an affair with broke it off, so she tried to kill him when she took her own life. Amelia's never-ending questions were then stopped by her colleague, Aldous Clayton. Handing Constance's card, he mentioned that he was from the Mayflower Company. The following day, Constance was embarrassed by the newspaper headlines. Miss C, the daughter of a viscount, emulates the infamous Scarlet Castile. She indulges in now-banned hallucinogens and spends her days in wild orgies. Complete nonsense! Mylene was quite disappointed, especially since she looked up to Amelia as a role model. Her dream was to stay unmarried and become a reporter. After all, she had always been obsessed with chasing rumors. Constance was even the one who suggested she become a reporter. Heading out, Constance was approached by Kimberly Smith, a lady who represented the Ladies' Committee of the Violet Association. They were working to rid their land of inhumane culture. So, Kimberly had come to remonstrate with the young lady who idolized Scarlet. Constance wanted nothing more than to leave. She was having quite the day. Kimberly hoped the bit about her hallucinogens wasn't referring to Jackal's paradise. Suddenly, Scarlet showed up. It seemed she knew something about this. Constance turned to her, but Kimberly redirected her attention back. The lady felt aristocrats such as her were bigots, who didn't even consider the common folk as human. That's when Kate showed up, questioning if her family were also bigots, simply because they were of nobility. As passerbys began whispering, Kimberly excused herself and left. Then, Kate approached Constance, asking if she truly got engaged to the Earl of Ulster. She was deeply hurt that her friend would keep this from her. Filled with guilt, Constance felt she was an awful friend, but Kate was the one person she couldn't get dragged into all this. The next day, Constance met up with Randolph, thanking him for his help with the investigative committee. Walking through the garden, they caught sight of a man running past them. He was Kendall Levine, a high-ranking diplomat and a special envoy from Ferris. Seeing how flustered he and his subordinates were, Scarlet suspected they had lost a member of their delegation. Someone with the name Ulysses had been missing since yesterday. Randolph suspected it was Ulysses Ferris, the 9-year-old 7th Prince of Ferris. The Parisians had been surprisingly quiet about this. He would need to return to the security force quickly. As for Constance's meeting with Cecilia, she promised to be careful. The Crown Princess wouldn't trip her up if she could help it. If all else failed, she'd use his name. Scarlet would then leave to find clues about who abducted the little prince amidst all this security. Upon meeting with Cecilia, the Crown Prince was upset to hear that Randolph had urgent matters to attend to. Nevertheless, she was happy to have a guest. Meanwhile, Scarlet informed Constance of her findings. There was a suspicious man known as Vado, a merchant from the Republic of Sodita. He had come to see Cecilia. The Crown Princess boasted her fine collection of antiques, which came from all over the continent. Vado usually found them for her, and he even visited her yesterday with some fine carpets. As Cecilia poured her tea, Constance noticed a distinctive smell. Cecilia used to be rather sickly, so Vado fetched her a special herb tea as a favor. Considering she was nearly poisoned, Constance assumed she was always on guard. Hence, her tea was different from Cecilia's. The Crown Princess would then tell her the full story. The day Enrique reneged on an appointment with Scarlet in order to pay her a get-well visit, Scarlet was furious. That very night, they found out one of their water jars had been poisoned, and Scarlet's earring lay beside the poisoned jar. A half-empty bottle of poison was also discovered in her home. Following that, she was executed for her crimes. But Cecilia admitted she herself was guilty of falling in love with Enrique, knowing he was engaged. It was also her fault he had no children. She assumed he would cede the throne to his younger brother, Johann, who had a son and a daughter. Cecilia put on quite the act to win favor around her, but Scarlet couldn't be fooled. She could tell that the herbal tea was poisoned to terminate pregnancy. The after effects should be wreaking havoc on her insides. Cecilia's body must be as cold as ice. Seeing the Crown Princess drink the tea caused Constance to squeal. Scarlet let her know that she would become a target now. But Constance couldn't just let an unsuspecting person drink poison. Scarlet tried to pretend that she was lying, but Constance could always tell when she was speaking the truth. As for Vado, his hamper could be used to carry a small child. So, they decided to do some more digging. After visiting some companies, they learned Ferris had a monopoly on that abortion drug, but no one knew of the man named Vado. Scarlet claimed this itself was valuable information. Suddenly, their carriage stopped, and the coachman mentioned there was something wrong with the tires. As he came back, Scarlet immediately noticed the coachman's voice was different. Opening the window, Constance was startled by a man staring right at her, causing her to jolt back. To check if he was a bad man, she said the same words the kids told her back then, Kiriki, Kirikuku. The man instantly tried to unlock the door, but Scarlet would use her powers to push him back. In desperation, he pulled out a gun to shoot. Oh my god, is she dead? Blood splattered on the window of the carriage. Constance was safe. Opening the door was Aldous Clayton. She couldn't believe it. He looked nothing like the same person she had seen earlier. As she noticed him, Aldous turned around, remarking that he would have let her be if she were none the wiser. Aiming his gun at her, he said she was about as foolish as they came. Shortly after, they would arrive at Folkvanger, the House of Plenty, on Rosencruz Street, or as Constance knew it, the infamous high-class brothel. She feared Aldous was about to sell her. Getting inside, Abigail laughed at the whole situation. Apparently, Aldous was so shocked that Constance recognized him, so he brought her here. Abigail was the owner of the place, and Aldous, whom she referred to as Rudy, was basically her guard dog. The Mayflower company he worked at also belonged to her. As for the man who wanted to attack Constance, Aldous shot him in the leg, but he wasn't fazed. He turned out to be a trained soldier, not just any dealer. For someone who sold nasty drugs, what did he want with Constance? She wondered if she might have done something. Suddenly, Randolph came running into the room, panting and out of breath, but his breath steadied as he set his eyes on her. He had come for his Constance. On the carriage ride back, she apologized for worrying him so much, but he, too, understood there was nothing she could have done. However, in the future, it would be better if she informed him before taking any initiative. Turning to Scarlet, Constance noticed she wasn't all right. Scarlet was a bit sleepy. Using that power back then drained her, so she decided to take some rest. Arriving home, Kyle approached Randolph, letting him know they'd be working late again. It was concerning the body of the coachman who was shot. Kyle mentioned he had a sun tattoo on the nape of his neck. Constance recalled she had seen that same work on the body of a woman who collapsed during the masquerade ball. Randolph referred to her as Kiara Grafton, but Constance told him that Scarlett referred to the woman as Jane. Hearing that she had a sweet smell about her, Randolph confirmed that it was Jackal's paradise. It was a potent hallucinogen, also known as Jane in certain circles. The coachman who attacked Constance was also a drug dealer who had the same tattoo. She wondered who these people were. Randolph explained that they were a vast criminal syndicate they'd been pursuing for a long time. Murdering, kidnapping, human trafficking, hallucinogen smuggling. They were known for all kinds of crimes. It was said they belonged to no nation and would do anything for the right price. Their name? De Gallus, which meant the rooster that crows at dawn. The following day, Kate would come visit Constance. A messenger from the Grail house had come to them last night, saying she hadn't come home, and asked if they knew anything. She wanted to know what Constance had gotten herself into. Was it something dangerous? And if it was best to give up on it. Constance couldn't bring herself to tell Kate. It was way too dangerous. Kate was the last person she should tell about this, but her actions only served to hurt her friend more. Not a word about her engagement, and now, not a word about this. An explanation would have helped, but Constance would only apologize and then dismiss her. As Kate left, a strange man showed up in front of Constance's gate, dropping a package. Without considering the risks, she rushed to pick it up, and its contents would leave her shocked. Inside was a lock of Kate's hair, and a letter that read, "Come alone to the shore of Lake Bernadia at noon tomorrow. Don't breathe a word to anyone. If you miss our appointment, we'll send you a finger next." Elsewhere, Shoshana would open the door for Salvador, welcoming him back. Seeing the big bag he was carrying, she curiously asked what it was, and as he rolled it open, there she saw Ulysses Ferris, the seventh prince of Ferris. We turned to where Kate was being held prisoner. The kidnapper then came in, asking her where Lily Orlamoon's key was. He dragged her hair, telling her not to play dumb. The man knew Constance had the key, but she had never heard of such a thing. And even if she knew about it, she'd never tell him. Just as he was about to beat her up, Salvador walked in. He made it clear that Jose's job was to sell paradise, meaning he had no right to pull a stunt like this. The man explained that looking for the key was part of their job too. His partner was following a lead and got bumped off the moment he touched Constance. But all that didn't matter to Salvador. Salvador asked Kate if she resented Constance, but she didn't. On the contrary, meeting Constance was the best fortune she ever had, and she had never been prouder of anything than she was of being her friend. 11 years ago, during a cold winter, Kate's mom would give her a basket of cookies as she went for her first real party. At the venue, she didn't have the chance to properly greet Pamela before getting mocked for the way she smelled. Bruh, Pamela was a stupid bitch even back then. Constance was the only one who didn't insult her like the others. In fact, she thought Kate smelled like cookies. Pamela and her cronies would walk off, irritated. Kate would then share her cookies with her. Constance immediately fell in love with the delicious taste. From then on, they became close friends. Sulking in her bed, Constance worried about her friend, but she couldn't remain sitting around doing nothing. On her way out, she bumped into Randolph. He was here to ask Scarlett if there was anyone else at the ball using Jackal's paradise. Recalling the warning from the letter, Constance couldn't bring herself to tell him about it. It might endanger Kate. However, Scarlett would mention Norman Holden. He was someone who had quite the Jane habit as well. With the message relayed, Randolph left to look into him. As he walked away, Constance tried to reach out, but held herself back. In the end, she got Kate involved in the worst possible way. Their friendship might never be the same after this, but she was determined to save her. Arriving at the location, Constance was taken to see Kate. Both were held as hostages. Furious to see her, Kate questioned why she came. She didn't want to be saved if it came at Constance's expense. Kate would be released, but not as Constance expected. More like taken away to be executed. Constance screamed for them to stop. Before being taken away, Kate told her to follow her own path. This wasn't the promise, but what did Constance expect? There was no way kidnappers would be true to their word. She struggled, offering to do anything if they would just let her go. The next second, a loud bang echoed through the woods. Constance fell to her knees, regret filling her up as she screamed at the world. Suddenly, Randolph showed up with his forces. He had already arrested the goons in the woods. It was all a setup, one that Scarlett was quite aware of. At the security force office, Randolph revealed that Earl Norman Holden had passed away 13 years ago. There was no way he'd be at that ball. He was an old coot whose hobby was preaching the goddess's word at people. One day, someone flew into a rage and killed him over it. Norman's last words were, "Oh God, save me!" And this was how Scarlet passed the message to Randolph. Constance would then apologize for worrying him. Randolph, realizing he was actually worried about her, surprised all of them. Then, word came that Kate's treatment was done. On their way out, Constance was approached by Amelia. Today, she wasn't looking for how to use Constance for a juicy headline. Instead, she wanted help. She had a scoop that could shake the entire kingdom about Cecilia. According to her, the crown princess had the blood of a prostitute in her veins. Her family, the Luzes, were a proper line of blue-blooded viscounts after all. However, Amelia had gotten a tip that their family register showed signs of tampering. Although Viscount Luz had a daughter with his wife, the daughter was said to have died in an epidemic quite some time ago. It turned out the Viscount had another daughter. Although her rose-red eyes proved she was of Luz blood, he'd given her to an orphanage because her mother was only his mistress. They say this girl and a boy at the same orphanage swore eternal love. The girl's name was Cece. The crown princess often slipped out of the palace to visit the people of the slums. It was famously proof of her virtue. However, Amelia suspected she was secretly meeting up with her old lover. Sadly, her source went and turned into a drug addict. Now, she needed someone else who was close to Cecilia. This was where Constance would come in, and she wasn't given much of a choice in this. Meeting up with Kate, she rushed into her arms. Kate was still trembling from the trauma. Constance then told her there was something she had to hear. At the same time, Jose was secretly taken out in his prison cell. And this secret assassin was Crown Princess Cecilia. She'd meet up with Salvador, who asked her to take the chance to bear the prince's child. But it'd be harder for her to get anything done in this state. As for why he was here, he had a message from headquarters. They were resuming the Holy Grail of Eris. Oh wow. They said the name of the show, guys. I don't think it's getting any better though. Subscribe to keep up with next week's part. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.